All right, so I was just listening to Bill Simmons, by the way, video 44. Thank y'all. Brain going. Let's get it. All right, so I was just listening to Bill Simmons, and he was saying that he thought it would be interesting if the Hawks packaged Trae Young for Kevin Durant, since they got DeJounte Murray now. And it dawned on me there was a point that I wanted to make that I never got around to turning the camera on yesterday. And the point was I was trying to figure out why teams were trying to match players up that play the same position at max contracts or big contracts. Because we've seen two trades like that in this last week that just basically is something we haven't seen too often. And for it to happen twice, it's like, okay, are these two organizations extremely incompetent in what they're doing? I think the Timberwolves definitely were. But is this a trend for a reason, or is just an anomaly of two teams just deciding to do something that is basically ill-advised, or are they preparing for something? And I started a video off with the intent of making this point. I think it's possible this is what they're thinking. Those trades could have been made as big-time insurance for the pieces they already have in place so they can get rid of those pieces for whatever reason. Like, for example, Karl Anthony Towns was just re-signed to a $226 million contract. I believe it's $226. Forgive me if I'm wrong, if the framework ain't right on that, but I'm just going off my brain. But then immediately went and traded for a player that plays the same position. Now, some could say that's going to be good for the basketball fit for him because now it gives him a twin tower effect, gives him defense, blah, blah, blah. You know what I think of that. But what it also could do is give the organization insurance to trade Karl Anthony Towns. Now, if they decide to trade Karl Anthony Towns, it's a good chance they can get a return like that of which they got for Rudy Gobert, or gave up for Rudy Gobert. So they may be able to recoup those assets if they choose to trade Karl Towns, so long as his value is where it is right now. Well, I don't know if it's all as high as it would be because he didn't play his greatest in the playoffs, but nevertheless, he just got paid $226, so clearly his team values him. I think most of the league values him pretty high too, even though I hear reports that, well, no, don't worry about those reports because that too speaks to his value being high, not lower. But for whatever reason, I guess it's been reported that the Timberwolves were not willing to offer Karl Anthony Towns in a trade for Kevin Durant. So that speaks to them having high value for him. But nevertheless, I'm trying to figure out why they would do this. Why would they trade for Rudy Gobert besides the fact that they just thought it would be a good basketball fit? Is this a trend for both teams to have done this, or is this just as I said, two teams deciding to do something? But I think this could be actually a trend, and I could see Trae Young and Karl Anthony Towns being traded within a year or 2 years. I could see that. And if they're traded within a year or 2 years, then you could see what these teams were thinking about. These are small market teams who have now doubled down on the same position. What do small market teams usually run into a lot of the time? The players that they pay end up bolting. Bye-bye. And what ends up happening is they have to look for that position, and it usually sends them in disarray. Whew. Now you're looking for another player who can do what it is that player who just vacated you can do. But if you already have a player on tab with that value at that same position, you don't even have to change your play style. You don't even have to do too much to retool to keep going. Now, if that's the mentality of what these teams are doing, that can make some sense. I don't know if I would go about it the way that they're doing it, but if I believe that I can get the value that I'm giving up in acquiring the player that's already on contract, if the player I already have bolts, I have a player on contract that can keep me above the fray. So it's not about necessarily the fit entirely. It's about making sure you always have that max contract in place so that you don't have to go through the process of players leaving. Because these teams end up having revolving doors. They get these players, they develop these players, and they bounce. And they're left without any representation of that for which left. Now, if you have a player on tab that you can then have in place to slot in that position, you can keep going or recoup what was lost by trading that max player for the value that the other player walked and took with him by doing so. Now that's hella risky. I don't know if that really makes sense, to be completely honest with you. Because what you've done now is you've let go of two max players in my mind. But in terms of the flexibility and what it would take to be able to retool once a player bolts on you and you are left with nothing if you're not able to trade them or sign and trade them or something, if they just demand out, maybe in theory you have insurance for that player. So let's say Trae Young demands out. DeJounte Murray's already in place. Let's say Karl Anthony Towns demands out. Rudy Gobert's already in place. Maybe that's the logic. Because I'm looking at the Los Angeles Lakers situation. I'm saying, okay, this doesn't have anything to do with this at all. But I'm just looking at the situation as it pertains to Russell Westbrook is on tab right now. And the value of keeping the player is letting him walk so the cap space can be present, of course, so that we could use that on another player in that time. But if for some reason Russell Westbrook were to leave, well, no, that doesn't add up. Let me try to stay on point here. If for some reason the Lakers were to have Russell Westbrook in a situation where he was on for multiple years, it would be an entirely different situation, of course, because then you would have to trade him to another place for which the contracts and the salaries would match, as to which they would be able to recoup the value of whatever they're losing by acquiring him. If you're following me. If he's on for 1 year and he walks, there's no way for me to recoup that value. So if I have a player in place of that value already in place, etc., that's already been said. So I'm trying to make all this make sense, and I'm equating it to our situation with the cap space being replenished upon him leaving versus the situation we're talking about. For which I see a lot of nothing. My mind went blank. That point is gone. At the end of the day, I think I'm trying to make sense of what this is, and to be honest with you, I'm still not clear if that actually adds up, but I wanted to present it to you guys because otherwise it's just teams making choices to put players together that, in my humble opinion, should not be put together. And if there's no method to that madness, then these players are in those situations for absolutely no reason, and good luck to them on making it work. I think Karl Anthony Towns should not have to be forced to play with Rudy Gobert at all. I think DeJounte Murray should not be forced to play in a backcourt with Trae Young. I do not think that. And I don't think that, small markets should be forced to do weird stuff to keep a star in place. And that's exactly what's going on here. Too many of these guys have lost players that they've developed for no reason. Players that they couldn't keep for salary cap reasons. Players that they couldn't keep because guys just want to play in more nice surroundings or what have you. Want to play near the sunshine and all that. So they have to keep on trying to build through the draft or have down years, all these different things. Now it's just getting to a point where it's like, let me trade for multiple year contracts. Let me just trade for multiple year contract. Is a guy on for 3 or more years and is he at a certain level? Okay, well, let me get him in place so that the other guy bounces that I already have, he'll be in place to take his place. That is the point, man. That's the point. I don't know. I hope this goes well for the players. That's all I'm saying, man. Because I look at Karl Towns and I'm saying now, yeah, you can play power forward, but you're also going to have to slow down because the pace is going to have to keep up with Rudy. Or they're going to be interchangeable as to which you're not getting $200 million out of either one of them. Or you got situations where one of them gets in foul trouble, but the other one's having a bad night. Stuff like that could really happen, and you render yourself with so little talent around them because most of your cap's wrapped up in two centers. It's just your guard play is going to suffer. Anthony Edwards going to have to take on real serious defensive assignments while taking on the boatload of the scoring because you know for a fact that Rudy is not going to help you with that. And I look at the Atlanta situation, I'm like, all right, well, Trae Young's going to be holding the ball all day long, all lifelong. And really, DeJounte Murray's offensive game is going to be asked to take 2 or 3 steps backwards because he's going to have so much of a defensive role on this team. Problem is, he's a great offensive player. He doesn't have the greatest jump shot, but everything else in his offensive game is crazy. He's a fantastic finisher, fantastic passer, fantastic guy. He can get to the line, finish the free throws, things like that. I think he's a good free throw shooter. I don't know though. Don't know about his free throw shooting, but the point is he's turned into a fantastic star. Rebounds like a forward. I mean, you just gotta respect that he needs a backcourt by himself. He needs to be the only point guard in the situation, in my opinion. He don't need to be sharing ball handling duties with a guy who needs the ball himself, who's best when he's controlling the offense, who's best when he's a one-man band. For the life of me, I can't seem to understand why Atlanta keeps bringing a one-man band so many weapons. And why do they keep doing this? Like they need to be building around him in ways that don't make it so that he's taking shots from others. That's why Iverson's team was built the way that it was built, even though I don't think they should have given him so little offensive help. But you know, or even more so modern, the Miami Heat, where most of the players they have are defensive players with the exception of Jimmy Butler and Tyler Hero, who they play in regular rotation. But about everybody else is there for defense. That's the type of situation Trae Young needs. And while DeJounte Murray is an elite defensive guard, so you definitely can slip him into that situation, DeJounte also has elite offensive skills as well, and you need to allow him the opportunity to continue to ascend into his greatest self. You put him in his backcourt, you're rendering him as a guy who's got to compliment another guy. That's not what he's signing up for. That's not what his talent level is telling you he's about to be. That's not what he just did in San Antonio. I mean, yes, is it a good backcourt? Of course. Yeah, they're going to be great together. But you're asking one of those stars to take steps backwards to assist another star in ascending forward. You're asking for chemistry issues. You're begging for it, especially if they start losing, which they will, because Atlanta, they're not going to be good enough. You can tell by the type of moves they're making, they ain't going to be good enough. So that's what I think of those two situations that you guys probably already know. I know a lot of people love them situations. That's cool. But I pay very close attention to fits, especially since I'm a Laker fan and what we just went through. And while the DeJounte Murray, Trae Young fit could be okay if DeJounte's hitting shots, you know, catch and shoots. If his catch and shoot game is crazy, it's going to be just fine. But the adjustment is unnecessary. It's just unnecessary. He should be leading the new Utah Jazz. That's what DeJounte Murray should be doing. He should be leading the Spurs. God's honest truth. He should be on the Spurs right now. They should never have let him go. And by the way, I don't understand the logic between needing to let him go and needing to tank. He's 25 years old. He can definitely lead a tank. Now, if he decided he didn't want to resign, that's a whole different story. If he said he wasn't going, he's leaving the Spurs, he just walk for nothing to trade me now, then that's a different story. But if it became a dollar issue, he should have been paid. If it became, I don't want to pay you $200, he should have been given $200. You're willing to give up that much pick equity, or rather, you receive so much pick equity, you know what he was worth. So, yeah, man, they're going to live to regret that, even if they do get Victor. To be completely honest with you, because all you're going to say is you wish DeJounte Murray was Victor's point guard. That's all that's going to be. So, yeah, is what it is. All in all, I appreciate you guys being patient with me. As you can clearly see, my brain is all over the place all the time. But you know, I'm going to give you what my passion is, which is reading tea leaves and NBA basketball stuff, man. Whatever the rumors tell me, I'm going to try to make sense of it. And if the rumors align, I could tell you what I see, and sometimes it may actually happen. In this case, I don't really know what I'm looking at, which is why I went through that whole little spiel there of pausing and trying to keep my brain in order while on this camera, because that situation is hard to really wrap your mind around, especially the Timberwolves. But at the end of the day, I think with the Timberwolves specifically, I just think A-Rod is now going to have to deal with a lot of headaches that this move is going to provide him. And that's just the reality he's in. You just picked up a player that just doesn't hold the value that you paid for. And so now you got to try to undo that. And it's gonna be a very difficult decision trying to undo that. I think his best bet is to probably trade or call Anthony Towns for as much pick equity as possible and choose Anthony Edwards as the player to build around. That's honestly what I think the Timberwolves could do. That's the best way forward right now, because you can't. Rudy Gobert, what you just gave up for Rudy Gobert, you're not gonna get it. You're not gonna get half of that for him if you try to trade him now. And if you start the season with him and he looks like he did, his value is gonna plummet from here. So that's something you need to be ready for. You just picked up a dead asset. So that's just it. You suffered a loss, and you work around it. But the thing is for the Timberwolves is how quickly do you realize what I just said? Because if they start the season actually thinking that he's that player, and this season plays out the way I know it will, they're gonna find out what they just found out. So the sooner they get this all in their head, probably the better they'll be able to manage the situation. But if they let this drag out, if this goes on a season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons, they're going to find out exactly what they just did to themselves. The sooner you realize this is a catastrophe that you can't undo, the better you'll be able to manage what needs to happen next and not further do damage to yourself, Minnesota. And as far as Atlanta, that situation isn't as bad because DeJounte Murray is a baller. He just got to make the adjustment, and if for some reason it don't work, they can trade him for what they traded him for because he's still worth that. He's going to be still worth that. That's not a dead asset by any stretch of the imagination. They just got to make it work. So I personally think DeJounte Murray is going to probably want out of there within the next 18 months. That's what I think. And if not him, then it's going to be Trae Young. So I don't see that coexisting at all because, as I said, they're just not going to be good enough to win, so they're going to be frustrated because they're both going to be asked to sacrifice, and it ain't going to be worth it. So unless they're able to get KD themselves or Ayton themselves, for which I don't think that's enough either, not Ayton anyway, then it's going to plan out. It's going to play out the way I think it's going to play out. So that's just my prediction, and I'm sticking to it. So I'm done rambling about this kind of stuff, man. I'm going to get back to what I was doing with that art, finish that piece. I thank you guys for rocking with BF44, and I'm out.